Okay, thank you all for coming over here. Welcome to the new 401 webinar on integrations. My name is Raul, and I am a support specialist and a professional services ninja here at Klipfolio. Now, I've been with Klipfolio for a little under a year, and some of you might have seen me respond to your chats, tickets, and phone calls, and that's what I do as part of support. And I do see some familiar names and some new ones as well, so welcome. Now, I just want to mention that we do have a worksheet that you can fill up as we go along here. So anything that I mention, you can jot, notes down. But I do have some suggestions that you can fill up there that I think are important or interesting to note that you can take down. So I'm just going to paste the link to it here in the chat, and you can get access to it. So you'll be able to follow along as we move on. So on the support team, one of the most popular areas that people reach out about is whether they can connect and get data from a service that they are using. So this webinar in particular is going to help you figure that out and show you how you can get yourself set up to get your data into Klipfolio. Now, as a customer, you want to be able to get your data into Klipfolio so that you can visualize and see it in real time. What we will do is see how you can get your data by a services API, and we will cover how you can do that using our data connectors. We have two types, the pre-built connectors and the REST URL connector. So just to rewind a little bit before that, you might be wondering what are APIs. So what really are APIs? API stands for Application Programming Interface. And in this context, you can kind of think of it as a way for services to talk with each other. So from Klipfolio, you can use the API to request data and say, hey, this is the data that I want. And the service will see this request and will respond with the requested data. Now the service has a set list of requests that it understands, and most services publish this list and its details in their API documentation. And so this is sort of like the manual, if you will, for us to figure out how and what data you can get via the services API. So in your worksheet, you should be able to fill those first three blanks up. API stands for the Application Programming Interface, and it enables services to talk with each other. And the API documentation is like a manual for us to figure out how and what data we can get via the services API. So we will go through all of that, and we will also have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So feel free to stick around for that if you had any questions that you might have thought of as we move along this webinar. So now, as a customer, the first thing you want to check is if you are new to Klipfolio, or if you have a new service that you want to hook up to Klipfolio, if you have access to pre-built clips that are already available in the clip gallery, right? So if you don't have to do any work and we did all the work for you, why would you want to take advantage of that? So you can definitely check if those services that you want to connect to have pre-built gallery content that we have done. And to do that, there are a couple of ways. One way you can do that is by going to our clip gallery here. So if you go to klipfolio.com/clip gallery, you'll be able to see all the integrations that we have. This is on the worksheet as well as a useful link. It's the first one, so you can click on that later on to see what are available. So you'll see that these are the services that we integrate with, and you can add this to your dashboard without issues. Now, you can go and look at any one of these. So for example, Google Analytics, you'll see that we have a few that you can add to your dashboard, and it's a matter of just clicking on that and adding to the dashboard. Now, I won't go into too much details here because we do have other webinars that cover this, so I'm just going to give you a quick glance through of this. Now, this is not the only place. The other place that you can get access to the clip gallery is within the app, and here you will see that if you add a clip on the dashboard, you have the clip gallery option here, and again in a similar manner you have all the services available for you here. And if you wanted to search for a specific one, let's say if I'm looking for Google Analytics, I can just search for that and I have access to those same pre-built clips that I can then add to the dashboard. So what happens if you do see that the service you're interested in is listed, but none of these clips work for you? Maybe the data sources don't have the information that you want, or what we have built is not quite what you're looking for. So then what you want to do is you want to bring in your own data. Now in this case, we have a few options. Okay, the first one is to use an existing data source from a pre-built clip that we have. So some of our pre-built clips may take you far enough, but maybe not quite there. In that case, you can always tweak the data source from the sample clip. And this is where the API documentation really comes in handy. So you have access to what you can and cannot bring in from the API, and you have access to information as to how you can do that. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you quickly what I did a few days back for a client of mine, a customer of ours. And what I did was basically help him tweak a Zendesk clip that is available right now in the library. So this is the clip that he had available. And I'm just going to authenticate here. And that's going to add that clip for us. Now what you're going to notice is that this clip has got 4 metrics that it covers. This is Zendesk. So what they do is they are a help desk tool, and they allow you to monitor how many tickets come in. And this is the ticket stats for today. We have 4 new, 6 open, 4 pending, and 3 closed. That's what the clip tells us right now. Now, the customer was aware that there is another status that is not reported in this clip, and that is the solved status. So he was interested in getting that information in as well. We don't have it here, but if we look at the API documentation, you will see that that is an option if you wanted to bring it in. So this is the API documentation. Now, if we scroll through here, you'll see that we have a status field, and we have a few options there. We have new, open, pending, hold, solved, and closed. So we have the rest, but we don't have solved. So let's go and look at our clip and see if we can edit this to include that metric. So I'm just opening here. We see that we have 4 data sources, one for new ones, one for the closed ones, one for open, and one for pending. But we need one for solved. So what we can do is we can open up the existing data source and we can duplicate it. Okay, and instead of saying Zendesk pending, we can say Zendesk solved. And then what we want to do, so it says Zendesk solved tickets. What we want to do is we want to reconfigure. Now you'll see that this query is already here from the existing data source from the pre-built clip. And the only thing that we need to tweak here is instead of saying pending, we want it to say solved, because according to our API documentation, that is a valid status. So we're just going to do that. And then we're going to say get resource, and that will ping the service and return data for us. So there you have it. We have that data that was successful, and all we need to do is just add that into our existing clip. So that is the data source we just created, and then we just need to add that to our clip here. So let's just see what we did here. This is a layout grid, so we just increase the rows by 2. Let's just copy that separator, put it there, and this one looks like it is a value pair. So we're just going to copy or input a value pair, and then the top value is actually a count of our solved tickets, and the bottom value is the status, so we're just going to modify that. Okay, now it looks a little bit different, and that's just a matter of formatting. So we'll just say that the font size is large. It looks like a large, and then here it looks like it's bold, but we want it to be regular. So if we save that, you will see now we have the 35 solved tickets. So it looks like a pretty busy day for us here. And there you have it. We had a clip that didn't quite work for us, but we tweaked the existing data sources and the existing clip to get it to how we want it to be for ourselves. Now, if this is not an option for you, if none of the clips there work for you, you have to create your own data source. So what you need to do then is you need to follow library, data sources, and create a new data source, and you'll see that we have all the connectors available for you here. So when you need to connect to a service to get data, you need to authorize your account, and this connectors here help you to take care of that. Okay, we take care of that for you. So when you click on that, all you need to do is just put in the information that's required. The connector will also sometimes have sample queries preloaded, which is nice because you don't have to go through the API documentation to find the most common endpoints that you want to use. So in this case, for this example, I have another example to show you. Let's say I'm interested in Twitter, so I'll just put in Twitter there, and you'll see that there are some preloaded queries, or we can create one from scratch. Okay, so let's just say we want to look at recent tweets, and I've already authorized myself previously in here, but you might be prompted to do that, and you can just do that. And once you get to this stage here, it's just a matter of putting in your screen name, it looks like. So we'll just put Data Viz Ottawa. This is a local Ottawa meetup that meets once a month, and I happen to be to have access to that content. All right, and there you go. So these are all our recent tweets from the database meetup. So Twitter tweets. And that's our data there. Okay. Now this is a JSON data type. We also have tabular data type that you might be used to, but JSON is just a different way of displaying data. And if you're interested in finding out more about that, we have a webinar just for that. So you might want to look that up and sign up for that. So we have this data source, and now we're just going to build a quick clip. Let's say what I want to do is a news clip. Since these are all recent tweets, I can just use this one here, the news reader clip. And I'm just going to do something quick and dirty. So headlines are going to be our text, and the author is going to be the user. And then maybe we can also put in dates created at. And there you have that. You just put news reader. Now if I go to the dashboard, and I'll just add this clip from my clips. And there you have it. These are all the recent tweets. So what we did there was we created a brand new data source from scratch using our connector, and we got that data in, and we built a clip using that data. Okay, so If you are a little lost as to what endpoint to use, you want to refer to the API documentation. So if you don't want to Google it up, what we also have is on our support page, we have landing pages for each of the services that we have integrations with that kind of prompt you and guide you along to set up your first data source on your own. So if I am to look up Twitter, you'll see this article, use Twitter as a data source. And this walks you through all the different steps you have to take to create your new data source. Now, some services also provide a API Explorer, and what that means is that within that web page, you are able to put together the query that you want to use to get data, and you can see what data is returned using that query. And once you have that figured out, you can copy and paste that query straight into the data source in Klipfolio. So I'm just going to quickly go through this to show you. So the API Explorer in Twitter is on this website over here. And say if you wanted to look at, I don't think that was the right link. There you go, that's the API Explorer. Okay, so say we want to look at the mentions timeline. This is from the API documentation. So we want to look at all the mentions. We can get that, say we were already authorized, we can send this and we will get a response. But say we did all that and we have figured out that this is the query that works for us, we can just go into our data source connector, and we can do create a custom data source, and we can just paste that in there. And there you go, that's data that we get from the Query Explorer. And this is Twitter mentions. And we can follow the same steps we followed earlier to output this onto a clip. But this is a brand new data source that we created using the query that we generated in the Query Explorer. Okay, so those are some of the tools that you have at your disposal, and if you follow up on any of these pages for services, you will have all the information there. If you wanted to open up the Twitter doc API documentation, we have the link right there. The Explorer is right up top here too. Okay, so that's basically covering pre-built connectors and pre-built content. Now what happens though is sometimes you have services that we don't currently connect to. So you might be thinking like, how do you get those data in that instance? So in that case, you don't have to worry too much. I showed you that we have pre-built data connectors, but we also have one other connector here that is a generic one. So if you go to library data sources and create a new data source, instead of using an existing connector, you can actually use a generic one here called the REST URL connector. Now this REST URL connector takes in a query that you would get from the API documentation of that service that you are interested in integrating with, and this basically will do the same thing that you've seen before with the other data connectors. It will bring that data in based on the query that you put in here. So if you want to connect to this the service that you want to get data from, there are three things that you want to check. So I just want to bring it back to the worksheet there. There are three things there that you want to check. The first thing is that you need to make sure that the service actually has an API. Now generally, if it is a web app, it will have an API and corresponding API documentations. Sometimes the API are part of the service for free, and other times it might be an additional add-on, so that's something that you need to check. Okay, so that's one. Two, does the API follow the REST URL, a REST protocol? So REST stands for Representational State Transfer, and it is a pretty common protocol that is standard across most APIs, and that's what Klipfolio is compatible with. And the last thing that you want to check is also very important, and this is the authentication method. So what authentication method is used? We support four types: the basic HTTP authentication, the two-step authentication, the API key authentication, which is one of the more common ones that we see, as well as the Klipfolio OAuth authentication. Sorry, just the OAuth authentication. It's another kind of authentication that is a little bit more secure. So when it comes to services, if you see that basic two-step or API key authentication is supported by that service, it generally means that you might be able to connect right away. The exception there is the OAuth connection. In this case, there might be some development work that needs to be done on our end. So in that case, you can just reach out to us via tickets, and we will be able to let you know what the next steps there are. So once you have these three things checked, first that it has an API and that it is a RESTful one, and you can connect using the authentication method outlined in the documentation, you can basically set up a query and paste it right here and get your data. So of course, I have an example for you again. I won't leave you guys hanging. So I'm just going to show you an example using Zoho. So let me just gonna look up Zoho's API documentation here. So this is what the API documentation page looks like for Zoho. Sorry, wrong screen. All right, there we go. Let's put it there. So this is what it looks like. So first of all, we need to check that it has an API, right? So it has an API. And then next thing we need to check is if it is a RESTful API and whether we can authenticate to it. So here you can see that the CRM API is available in all editions of Zoho CRM, so you don't have to pay for it extra, it looks like. And then we use a authentication token. So it looks like we're using an API token here. And it is a REST API. So all three things check out. It's a REST API, and it's something that we can authenticate with. And then here are all the methods that we can use to get information. So these are the things that we can use to get data from Zoho. So all right, that looks good. All is well, so I'm just going to clean all these guys out so we have less clutter up here. So what are we going to do? We're first going to look at the base URL, and I have that here. We're going to do get records. So this is the example that they have provided us, and we can just literally just copy and paste this, okay, into our REST URL connected that we have opened, and that's supposedly going to give us all the records. So you see here that we need to replace the OAuth or the auth token with ours. So if you follow documentation here, you should be able to generate your own authentication token. I have one handy here, so I'm just going to copy and paste that one in. I'm just going to replace that. Okay. One too many in. And we say that this is a JSON type. I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in finding out more about that, you can look up that webinar and sign up for that. So we have our query here that we got from the API documentation. Now we're just going to say get resource. And there you have it. We have 20 records in our Zoho account, it looks like. So now we can take this data source and we can build a clip with it, like we did earlier with the Twitter data source. So you can see it's pretty simple. You first have to go to the API documentation and verify that they actually do have an API. And when they do have an API, you want to figure out if it is a REST API and what kind of authentication method they use. And on the sheet, again, you will see the different types that we support. And since this API authentication is the most common one, you just put it within your query and that gets you authorized to get data from the service. And that was pretty much it. So there you have it, guys. Integrations in general allow you to get data from your service into Klipfolio, and there are many ways to do it, whether we have pre-built content or not. You are able to go and find out on the API documentation whether you can connect data into Klipfolio from them. And it's just a matter of finding out three things that you have on your worksheet now. So that brings me to the end of the presentation here. I have some links on the worksheet there. We have the guide to REST API data that you can actually read up, and that gives you an overview of all the API query syntax and all that stuff that we just covered right now. And also on the worksheet, guys, under the point number 3 on the authentication, you can click on all those authentication types and you'll get more information on that as well. And as I mentioned, we do have other webinars. If you are interested, you can sign up for them on our webinars page, and I have the link put there as well. Last but not least, if you had any questions at all regarding today's session, you can just send me a message at support@klipfolio.com, and our support team, as usual, will be able to get in touch with you and have those questions answered. Once again, thanks for your time, and we look forward to seeing you in our other webinars. Have a good one, guys. Take care.